Welcome, I'm Gwen Mazza, and you are watching The Art of Transition. My guest today is Jerry Valentine, and he and I are going to chat a bit about traversing and the challenges of CEOs. Hold tight, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to The Art of Transitions. My name is Gwen Mazza, and my very special guest today is Jerry Valentine. Welcome, Jerry.
Good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Nice to have you. Jerry is a wonderful gentleman that I've had the opportunity to work with and know for many, many years, and I asked him to come on the show today to really touch a topic that is close to all of our hearts who are in the world of business. And we're talking about traversing the challenges and the temptations of a CEO. And Jerry is actually the president of Sir Motek. Could you tell the audience a little bit about Sir Motek and where you're located?
Sir Motek is located in Victor, New York. We've been in business 22 years.
And how did you guys get started?
I was actually working for another company that went public, and they decided to diversify into other businesses. So with the money they raised, we decided to start up this company because it supplied a niche to Rochester that we didn't have at the time.
When you were working with this other company, were you the president, or did you have to grow into that role?
Oh, I had to grow into that role. I was a manufacturing engineer for that company, and my chief role there was to work with other contract manufacturers to build our product. So that's where I got my background.
So tell me about your decision to buy this company called Sir Motek today.
It was an interesting decision. I'd worked for various companies for short periods of time, I think, in a young person's career of 5 years. And when this opportunity came about, I thought, well, I think I can do this. Mm-hmm. I've got enough background. It's a little bit of a stretch, but I thought, after working for 3 different companies for 5 years, I thought it would be a great opportunity to expand and be able to make my own decisions and make my own path.
Mm-hmm. So when you started out, how many folks were part of the Sir Motek family?
There were 13 associates at that time.
Okay. And you went from being chief engineer into the owner and engineering?
Well, I started with the company as like director of engineering and marketing.
Okay.
Moved into a GM role,
mm-hmm.
and when I bought the company, I had that role.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So one of the neat things I like about your story and the work that you do, plus the gifts you give to Rochester area, is that you are a small business person. You are the persons who come in and you really add to the community and you add to the economics. And you have grown your company over the last number of years. I've had the opportunity and the honor of watching it grow. And you've also grown as a person, and you've grown into your role as the president of the company. Tell me, as you sit with us today, and tell our audience some of the nuances that go, some of the challenges that go, and we'll look at some of Lencioni's work later that we use together to go through. What are some of the personal and professional challenges that you've experienced growing the company, because it is now
75
people? Okay, you have 75 associates, and it is at least twice as large as I knew when I met you,
yes.
when I first met you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty exciting. Some of those challenges that you have, because there is really no CEO school. We discussed that yesterday or the day before.
Well, I think part of the challenge is when you start a company, you're a lot of hands-on. Mm-hmm. You tend to do all the jobs, you wear all the hats. And as you grow the company, you have to determine which hats you need to shed. Which roles you need to hand off to someone else. And I think the key is to make sure that you can find that individual to hand it off to that's going to do a better job than what you did at it.
And that is true.
Right.
You want to find the folks who can do the better job than you can.
Because that's the way you're going to grow.
Mm-hmm. Some of those challenges of finding that particular best fit for the organization, how do you manage some of those choices?
Well, we've changed a lot through the years. When I first started, it was you looked at a person's resume, you kind of went through some references, you did the interview process, and you hired them, and it was quite frankly, just a roll of the dice sometimes. Since then, I think we've developed a pretty robust system. We do profiling, personality profile. We do values profile. We've really worked hard on trying to determine the purpose, mission, and value of our company, and making sure that those people will be aligned and be able to excel and perform and embrace that kind of culture.
So you really are starting, you pay attention to that fit, and you are incorporating your vision, value, mission, and purpose right into the interview process.
Yes.
And I also know, and I'm familiar, that you have a pretty incredible onboarding process that you're implementing these days.
We're working on that. We've determined that we need to expand that a little bit. I think one of the things over the last few years that we've struggled with is the training program and getting people on board where every company does more with less. And so when we do hire for a role or a position, they're already behind by the time they step in the door, and they try to get them up to speed. They basically have to hit the ground running. And I've noticed that we're just not giving them the right tools to be very successful in that 30, 60, 90-day range. And we're losing some traction. So our idea is to try to enhance that and give the people the skill sets and take the time and do the training and onboarding so that as we go through that time frame, then they're much more productive.
One of the things I do know about your organization is that you've actually started the onboarding process sometimes before they even walk in the door nowadays. And as a CEO and as somebody who knows that, and we'll get into some of those other temptations and challenges, what's that experience been like now that you're starting to change that? I know that you've recently tried that. What's that experience been like?
I think that's been very well. The last individual that we onboarded that way seems to really embrace the culture of the company and is really helping me move that forward. So I think if you can get every person coming in the door already attuned and understand and embrace the values and the purpose of your company, you get a lot of bang for your buck.
So that's kind of onboarding and bringing some of your people on board into your new organizations. And one of the pieces that's really in our world that we are aware of, as Jerry and I go through the business world, is how important it is for our CEOs to be healthy and well. And health and wellness, it comes in a lot of different ways. And part of it is by doing self-exploration. And one of the things I do admire about you, and you have been very diligent about it, is you have been willing to sit down and look at yourself and use different tools and different reading materials and articles and really explore what the concepts are that other people think. You may not buy into it 100%, and I wouldn't expect you to, but you do take what you need from different authors, different recommendations, and you really try to bring that into your organization. Some of the work we've done together, and you're part of the E2B meetings, and that's through the Inspirit program, is really looking at Lencioni's work, The 5 Temptations of a CEO. How was that piece of material helpful to you?
Well, that was really kind of enlightening in some respects. There were some points that I found that were roadblocks for me, and I think once you can identify those roadblocks, then you're halfway there, because then you can start working on them and you can enhance and get those roadblocks out of the way and move forward.
What is it like for you in terms of creating a team around you who will be really honest with you and help not enable you to keep those roadblocks in the way? Because that does happen in companies. And folks don't intend to do that. Our teams don't intend to do that, but sometimes they allow us to keep some concepts that might not be most helpful. What's that like for you to have folks around you to give you that feedback? Because before we even talked about doing that kind of work, you were already sending out the assignment of the questionnaire and asking your team, okay, tell me, do I behave this way? Are these concerns for me? And we'll go through again some of those concepts today.
Well, I've tried to incorporate some kind of a 360 throughout, my role there at Sir Motek. And I think part of the difficulty with that kind of environment or method, let's call it, is getting the people to be honest. Because I think most people come from environments in the culture of most companies that honesty is not part of or they're afraid to trust the individual that they can give them that honest feedback without repercussions. And I think you have to develop that culture first before you really can get that honest opinion back. And I have some of the members of my management team are still relatively new to the company within the last year or 18 months. So we're still developing that leadership team and trying to build that trust. And this exercise was pretty interesting, and some of the feedback I got. One was some were completely 180 degrees apart, but you can kind of get a feel, and you can kind of address those issues with those individuals individually and move forward.
Neat piece, one of the things that you're talking about is some of the newer members of the team, and one of the things I've noticed you growing into more over the years is your capacity to have more grace and more patience, and patience in knowing that those trusting relationships take time. Would you say as a CEO that's one of the sweet spots that you've begun to master a little better?
Well, I think I mastered that one a little better.
Yeah.
It's a little more difficult. I do like to make quick decisions. I think part of what I've done throughout my career is make a decision, move forward, and if it's the wrong one, we'll try to fix it later on.
Interesting, because one of the pieces that Lencioni talks about is some folks wait for certainty versus waiting for or developing clarity. And I think that's number 4 in his list of 5. And what you're saying is, I don't need to wait all that time now. I'll go for it. I don't need to have the certainty, but if there's a choice I need to make, I'll learn to readjust my vision or my laser down the road, but something needs to keep moving.
Right. You sometimes you don't have that time frame. Recently we went through an example of an acquisition that we were looking at, and in those instances, sometimes you can't wait for all the information. You have to kind of go with what you have, use your gut feel, and move it forward. And hopefully you've got enough information that you make the right decision, and then you can make adjustments as you go to make it better.
So sometimes the CEO or the president of a company, if they're waiting for that certainty, may actually be shooting themselves in the foot.
Right. You may miss out on opportunities that you won't have.
Right. So you would encourage them to go more for at least make a choice and a decision, move forward, and readjust as you go down the road.
Yeah, I think all CEOs are in that role because they have some background. They have some knowledge base that they can draw upon. And so sometimes you just have to draw upon that knowledge base and go with what feels right and move forward.
Excellent. One of the other pieces that Lencioni talks about is choosing popularity over accountability. And you see that in executive teams, you see that in organizations, and you do see that in companies where the CEO wants people to like them versus really holding people accountable. Tell me a little bit about what you've seen in your world of work and in your 20 years of being a CEO.
Well, Gwen, you may disagree with me,
Probably a little. That's okay.
but I don't feel that I've had that much.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with
Yeah.
in your organization.
So, but you've got to make, as a CEO, those are tough. A lot of decisions are tough decisions, and you've got to move forward. And I think people will respect you a lot more if you can make those tough decisions, move forward, and not worry about your popularity. I think people have to embrace your ideas and have to trust you, and I think that's where you get the buy-in and the empowerment to the people that work with you.
So popularity, I've also seen as very short-lived.
Yes.
You're really short-lived.
Yes.
And it might feel good for the ego of the CEO or for whatever, but in the long run, it really doesn't help the organization because the accountability is the place where people really feel well. I find it amazing when folks get a chance to step in and take responsibility and be accountable for different parts of an organization. You're right, that empowerment, and they really feel great, and they want to do more.
Right.
The popularity is more like people having to give you what you need for your ego to feel good, and just makes companies go painfully downward. Another piece that we talk about, again, is kind of like the popularity, is when people have the status of being a CEO, and we sit here in the status of a CEO, as opposed to really focusing on those results. And I have seen that and witnessed that, and having worked with folks, that folks really enjoy being a president or the CEO of an organization. Unfortunately, they forget that that's a very sacred role. And I do believe that every role is a very sacred role. That's just who I am. I do believe when someone is invited or asked or has the opportunity to be the owner, the president, the CEO, that we really, you talk about it's lonely at the top sometimes.
Very lonely. You can only, a lot of CEOs, I've been fortunate enough in my past to work with different CEOs and CEO groups, and it's a good way to have that outlet, because we all share those. They may not be specific to their business, but we all share the same kind of problems and issues, and to have a safe area to be able to discuss those kind of things without repercussions from your team or repercussions from other employees. It's a good thing to have.
And it seems, in the first and foremost important piece about presidents and CEOs is that they're human first. It's kind of like other roles that we forget sometimes, in that they're very much a person first, and we come with all those same kinds of worries and concerns at times that others might have, and yet we need to have a place that is also acceptable for us to have a chance to talk about them out loud, so others aren't going to be afraid.
That's correct.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Beautiful. One of the neat pieces that I think is really cool is I do enjoy harmony in the world. However, I also understand what healthy conflict is. And sometimes CEOs or presidents or individuals in executive positions will request that they have more harmony. They don't want to touch that, more helpful conflict. Can you speak to that a bit, sir?
Well, I've had team members in my management team that from time to time have taken on that role, that don't like to take care of issues, and to me, you have to take care of that issue, or it becomes cancerous in your organization, and it becomes a distraction, and you end up spending more time trying to correct that down the road. So again, it comes back with make the decision, move forward, have clarity, but in the process, you get rid of your popularity, move forward. But I lost my train of thought there.
That's quite all right. Well, part of that piece, as we're talking about the popularity in pieces, is that can cause conflict. And what we're looking at is really trying to have constructive conflicts in organizations. And the key for me is constructive conflict.
Right.
Not destructive conflict, because that's very, I think most of us in the audience and what have you, we all know what that looks like, and we may even have participated in it at times. But really, constructive conflict is the capacity to resolve issues in a way that is not damaging to others. It doesn't mean it doesn't have a loud tone at times, or it doesn't mean that it isn't passionate. It means it can be very passionate and can have a louder tone. At the same time, it's about understanding that you're not taking pot shots at each other, you aren't doing passive-aggressive behaviors, you aren't sabotaging decisions down at the end. It's really putting those ideas out there.
We've termed it in my team as being carefrontational.
Carefrontational, I like that.
Because you have to be honest,
Yeah.
but you have to be in a constructive way.
Right.
And those people are those team members that have put those issues off to the side. Again, you have to address them, but you have to do it in a carefrontational way, and get to the point.
Excellent. And when people learn, not only the management team, but when those who are working for us on the floor and really serving us in those capacities, when they see the executives and they see the CEO being able to do conflict resolution, one, it gives them hope that they can do it too. Two, it'll also make much more respect that they have for others. Okay. And three, it'll also role model for each other if there's a conflict or there's something that, and conflict is really a discrepancy. It's not a bad word, it's really a great word. It's simply a word that means a discrepancy between what one person sees in the other. And it's the capacity to have a great conversation, sometimes again with some passion, sometimes maybe even quieter, just to get some resolution so that folks can move the process forward. But that's a big one. Some presidents, CEOs may not like confrontation, and if they don't, they are going to have some real major challenges ahead.
Well, I'm always good for a lively debate.
I know. Yes, I like that. And I also like the fact is when you're done, it's not personal. And I appreciate that, and the information gets out there, and the reverence and the respect that I feel toward you or I or whoever you're debating with is truly felt. So thank you. You've really done a nice job in that, and over the years I've known you. One of the last ones that Lencioni talks about is a lot of CEOs, and we just went to a meeting on this most recently, have a real challenge experiencing. They're not willing to be vulnerable. They're not willing to be vulnerable, and they choose. And so, trying to help them to be trusting, to help them to get to that place, is very important. So, could you speak a little bit to how do you really let your team know who you are versus being invulnerable? So you really have to trust them to know who you are.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty honest with them. My background, I didn't come right out of high school, go into college. There was a little transition there, and I relate to people on the production floor a lot because that's where I started. So I like to share those ideas with my management team because a lot of them very intelligent people, and they have that background, but they don't have that relate to certain ideas, and so by sharing my background with them and the fact that sometimes you don't get to work with everybody you like, but it's a professional environment, and you need to get along, and you need to find that common ground that you can work together and move forward.
Is it difficult sometimes as the president to really allow folks to see you in your challenging moments? And I don't think it is. Let me put it this way. Now that I know you, I know it's not as difficult. So that's a funny question for me to even ask you. What I've witnessed, let me put it this way, over the last number of years is that you really have become much more comfortable, most times.
Most times.
Allowing yourself to simply be who you are, being vulnerable and trusting your team to say, this is what I do know, this is what I don't know. This is hard work for us, as opposed to just that.
I think that you have to be able to show that because you have to give that person, because they have their own insecurities.
Yeah.
And in order for them to move beyond their insecurities and their weaknesses and vulnerabilities, then I think you have to demonstrate that. And if you're a good role model in that area, then you can help them move beyond that.
That is one of those pieces that I've really watched and enjoyed being with you in your journey, is just really growing more into yourself and being comfortable with you. It's been very fun, so thank you for that part. What has been some of the fun parts? We've talked about some of the challenges that you've needed to traverse as a CEO, and really, connecting maybe someone who hasn't had a chance to work on the line with what that experience is like from your wisdom experience. What are some of the fun things that you've really enjoyed about being a CEO and the president?
I like developing people. I think that's you have to create an environment that people want to come to work in. We all have to support our families. We all have financial commitments, and so it's a necessity of life, let's say. But we want to create an environment where they feel safe, and they can grow, and they can grow into people and do things that they want to do and they enjoy doing. And you want to try to create that environment, but you still have to run a company, a sustainable company, and you have to have growth.
So from engineer to human developer. Quite a journey, huh?
Yeah, I guess if you can.
It really, when you think about it, to human developer, because that's a very neat piece. Other things that you think is really fun about being the CEO, developing people, creating sustainability. There's something I know about you. It's also about giving back to the community.
Yeah, we've done a couple things. I think last leap year, I used that extra day to tell everyone in the company to give back. So I give them a day off, and any day during the week or that year, and they decided what charity they wanted to work with, and they picked their own and took a day and worked with that charity and gave back to the community.
Community is very important to you, both internal and external, and I do realize that that's one of your values. How did that become so loud for you as a CEO?
Well, I think that as a management team, we looked at that value and everyone was saying family is very important. Well, we just expanded that version of family into a Sir Motek family, and then your community family. So we looked at that as we want to affect and bring value to everyone's life and touch on everyone's life. We want to make products that enhance people's lives.
Mm-hmm. And you are doing that.
Right.
That's very cool. And I'm excited to continue to be part of your family in the way I get to be. And I want to thank you again for choosing to, one, come on the show, and two, choosing to allow me to be part of your life. That's very cool. If you were, in the last few moments, wanting to share a couple words of wisdom with the CEOs or the people who are growing into this new role, take a moment to think about it if you need it. What would you like, the one or two points that you'd like them to know the most?
Well, I think with any small business and growing, there's the business aspect. Mm-hmm. There's the cash flow that needs to happen, and that's very important to keep your business moving forward. And I think quality of the work you do and your reputation as a company and the ethics around that. I think if you can put all that together and create this environment and culture within your company that every employee embraces the integrity of what they do and the challenges of what they do and bring forth their best effort, I think it makes it a lot easier for all those other business things to fall into place. And it's a challenge, I think, for most CEOs because they concentrate too much on the net worth of the company, their cash flow, and they lose track of building that culture and developing that culture.
So you're really a king of culture.
I'm
You say, I'm going to go for the king of culture, Ron. Excellent. Well, again, I want to thank you, Jerry. It is a pleasure. I'd like to thank our listening audience today. And a couple of things is if you're interested in connecting with Jerry, you're more than welcome to contact me through my website, and we'll forward you right to him. If you're a CEO who has further questions about temptations or challenges to Diverse and you'd like to have a direct conversation, you are more than welcome to contact us again at inspirit7.com. And for the rest of our audience, we'll see you soon on the next show. Thank you for joining us.